Hello and welcome to the Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Johnson. The Local Leaders Podcast provides a platform for successful business owners to share their stories, their experiences, their advice, and their ideas in order to help our listeners achieve more success in their business and in their lives. Get ready, another great show is coming up. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Jeff Johnson with the Local Leaders Podcast, and we are excited to be here today and to bring to you a serial entrepreneur from Savour Tallahassee. Wonderful restaurant. I believe it's in downtown Tallahassee, and Drew will be sure to straighten me out on that. But we've got Drew McCloud here, who's the founder and owner of Savour Tallahassee. And welcome to the show, Drew.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. I'm excited to kind of be a part of your podcast and maybe share a little insights from my experience.
Well, you've definitely got some experience from what I can tell and talking with you and doing a little research. If you want, I'd love to just open the floor and have you take a few minutes just to kind of tell the story about Savour, and if there are, some previous projects that kind of led you there. If you want to start there, that's fine as well. So please give us your story, Drew.
Give you what I can.
Yes,
certainly.
Sir.
I kind of grew up in an environment where my father had worked for owners of restaurants as a CFO, so to speak. And he told my brother and I at a very young age that going into the restaurant or hospitality industry would be a big mistake. You know, he just said that it's hard, it's not easy by any measure, and that it could be difficult. So at 14, as a rebellious young man, I got into it by washing dishes and bussing tables. And quite honestly, somebody asked me recently, "What are you doing now?" I'm still bussing tables and occasionally washing dishes. So. It was something that was just in my blood, and worked my way through school. At the high school level and at the college level. And it was a home to me. It was always comfortable. I tried a number of other things, real estate and banking, and just realized that, my gift was in hospitality. So I worked for some big corporate stores and, cut my teeth and learned quite a bit. And then in 1991, I had the opportunity to open my first restaurant on my own. I was 27 years old, and my dad was by my side in terms of teaching me the financial end of it. And it failed from a business perspective, but I learned to measure success in different ways. And so I took from that the positive things that I could. We provided a great product. We had price value. The decor was great. I mean, we did a lot of things right. We were just in the wrong place. And you'll know that most people talk about the restaurant industry, and in particular that it's location, location, location. And we were in the wrong spot. But shortly after closing that, I hooked up with a former employer of mine, and we became partners and started a restaurant in Midtown Tallahassee called Paradise Grill and Bar. And it became iconic. It was a seafood casual environment with live music, and it was just one of the biggest successes in Tallahassee in terms of the bar scene on Friday nights, but also great food the rest of the week. Mm-hmm. And we used that to build off of, and we opened a second location under a different name called Finney's Grill and Bar on St. George Island, about 90 miles west of here, in a location right on the beach. Great success for 12 years there. And from there, we opened up produce companies, seafood companies. We did some management for other people because I really had this heart and passion for consulting. I really wanted to help others achieve some success, and felt like the systems that I was putting in place and were working would benefit others in the industry. So spent a lot of time, helping others with licensing or operational programs and needs to help them build cultures that would lead to successful operations. And so we built a little fiefdom, so to speak. We had a couple of Wendy's operations, so we did a number of things. And then in 2007, I got an opportunity. I was presented from Carol Dover, who is the president and CEO of the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association, to join her team on her senior staff to head up their educational foundation statewide and give back. Really, it was 20,000 high school students in culinary programs, and lead that educational foundation for a number of years and help them with some business development. And that was great. I mean, it was a big transition. I sold out of 5 of the 7 companies that my partner and I had at that time. And, for him, it was difficult because I was an operator and hands-on, and he was not. And 2008 and 2009 weren't real kind in terms of the economy to a lot of businesses.
No, sir.
And, so over the next couple of years, those businesses really went by the wayside. And I spent 3 years with the FRLA, the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association. And then to kind of get to where we are today, I left the FRLA after 3 years and started a technology company, which was seemingly outside of my realm of and scope of understanding. But I met some great people, and they wanted to do something regarding hospitality. And we spent the next couple of years trying to develop a platform that would allow for open source menus. And although we had some success, we couldn't get to the level of money that we needed to make that happen. And so we raised $1 million and pretty much lost it. And but we learned a lot along the way, some of those life lessons. But in the interim, I was able to connect with an old friend and who was working with a startup of sorts called Brooklyn Water Bagel Company. And for 2 years, I helped them corral their model, and it got bought out by a billionaire. And nice. And that wasn't a great fit for him. Different mindsets, different perspective on worldviews, and I didn't stay. And at that point, hooked up with another friend of mine that I had met through the technology company, who had a hotel and wanted to transform the food and beverage services. And I became a partner at the DoubleTree Hotel in downtown Tallahassee, and was there for a little over 4 years. Made a great transformation, and 3 years ago sold out of that, thinking that I might focus on consulting. And my wife had wanted to transform the little restaurant next door. It was called Avenue Eat and Drink. It had been a number of things over the years, and we knew the space well. And although I wasn't at first overly excited about doing that, she said, you've had other partners in your past. What about partnering with me? And I couldn't think of anything better to do. And she had a vision for the decor, transformed the space. I was introduced to Brian Nepper, my executive chef. And ultimately, he's amazing, from Louisiana, a great, resume. And, we put it together, and it's turned out to be a very focused and very successful little restaurant. And we're proud to be showcasing Savour, 5 nights a week. We're open 22 hours a week. So very limited and focused on what we're doing now. And so it's been a journey, and it's been fun. And I have learned a lot along the way, and I continue to learn every day.
Oh, well, goodness. You've got a tremendously diverse background, Drew, and you've been involved in a lot of projects, I've got to say. And I like the way you started, when you mentioned the first location or your first startup that it didn't make it. And so many restaurateurs, entrepreneurs, get down in the dumps, because of due to failure. And of course, failure is just a way to learn lessons. As you talked about, you've really got to be able to turn that around. So it sounds like you just grabbed your bootstraps and went right back at it. Is that fair to say?
It was a tough situation because I was literally bankrupt. And in fact, my wife and I at the time were engaged, and I kind of suggested, hey, maybe you shouldn't marry me. It's not the best financial times for me. And she said, well, no, we'll get married. I just don't know if I'll ever work with you again. And I'm not quite sure what that meant, but fast forward 27 years, and I
Yeah.
was trying to get out of doing Savour and wasn't being very successful. I said, "Do you remember 27 years ago, you said you'd never work with me again?"
Yes.
And she said, "Yeah, but after 27 years of marriage, I'm going to give you a second chance." So my second chance of being her partner is about 60 hours a week now, and it just couldn't be any better than working with her. This has been a labor of love. Two of my younger boys work with us here in the restaurant. They're 17 and 14.
Nice.
They do great work, and it's just fun being together and doing this together.
Well, I think that's a fantastic story, and I appreciate you sharing it with us. And there's so many different things we could talk about there, from the DoubleTree to the technology piece. I was in technology for a while myself, and so maybe we can have some other conversations related to that. But tell me this: I kind of want to shift. Well, not really shift gears, but I want to talk a little bit about maybe some of the startup challenges. You've been through so many. Did you anticipate the challenges, especially related to the restaurants, accurately? And were those indeed the ones that you ran into, or were you surprised by new obstacles that maybe you hadn't even contemplated before?
Well, I think it's tough. We put together pro formas and we try to predict what we're going to do in volume. We try to predict what our product mix is going to be and how we're going to control costs. And we do all of that, and then we throw it out the window as soon as we get open, because most of it is just not the way you planned it. And,
it's all conjecture when it comes down to it.
It really is. And I think ultimately you have to be, pretty flexible in how you approach your businesses, and really get to know your customers. Like, what do they really want, and how are you going to present it in such a way that they're going to come back? My partner and I, for 18 years, Fincher Smith, when we were doing Finney's and Paradise and everything else, his role was to get them in the door. My role was to get them back. And so my focus became, what are we doing from a hospitality standpoint? It's not just the quality of the food and the quality of the service. It's really how the entire team and the culture that you have within the four walls of the business reacts to every single guest coming into the building. And we want them to feel warm and welcome. And when we do make mistakes, what do we do and how do we do it to correct it? So I've gotten to the point in my career where I'm really focused more on culture. I'm focused on the character of the team members that I hire. I'm less concerned about their abilities, their skill sets, and what they've done in the past. I'm more concerned about who they are as a person, so that as we build the team out, I have people that are like-minded and have a common goal they're working toward. So I use what I call the big five. Everybody knows it. It's on the hood. It's plastered everywhere in my office. But it's five things that I look for in terms of characteristics when hiring new team members. The first one is hard work. And we know the nature of our business is that we're just going to keep moving. It's a nonstop, let's get it done kind of thing. Second thing is respect. We want to respect each other as team members, and we want to respect every guest that walks through the door. Obviously, they're paying our way through this life, as we're working. The third thing is integrity. I'm looking for people that are going to be honest. They're managing my assets, and I need them to take pride in what they're doing, but at the same time, be honest in how they're managing my assets. The fourth one is dependability. Now, this is the one where I lose most of my staff, whether it's, my homework got eaten, my dog had a problem, I'm having relationship problems, or my car broke down. Reality is that I need you when I need you. And so I'm looking for people that have a track record of really being dependable. And the last thing, number 5, is attitude. And, I need people with an upbeat, positive, optimistic attitude that are going to bring that to the floor every single day. So when trying to hire team members that'll fit within that, I can teach them how to do the other things in most cases. And we'll know within a very short period of time whether those 5 characteristics are part of their personal makeup. So within 2 or 3 weeks, we'll know. I may not be able to identify that in the first 15 or 20 minutes of an interview, but once we do and they come in and they're a good fit, it usually works out really well when I look for hiring people of character, not people with great experience.
Right. And that makes me think, my wife's in the staffing business. So just got me thinking along those lines. On your interview process, just as an example, do you have multiple interviews? Do you have one? Are you the person who's doing it? What's
I
your
am.
process?
I am. I definitely do the first interview. And then because my wife has such a different perspective on things, she'll do the second.
Nice.
And it works out really well. But there's a couple things that I do, and they're, are they looking me in the eye? Is it a firm handshake? And one of the things that I do that most people don't is I'm curious to see how fast they walk. Now, that may seem pretty odd, but basically, I'll lead them to a table in the back of the restaurant, and I walk really fast. I'm just a fast. I move all the time. And if I get to the table where I'm going to interview them, I turn around and they're just barely, two steps behind me. I know that they'll be fine. Yeah. From that perspective. Right. If they're still at the front door, kind of figuring out what the heck happened, and they're just slow, and they move slow, chances are they're going to end up moving slow in the environment in which I need them to move quickly.
Yes.
So that's kind of one of those little things that I use to determine whether or not somebody's going to fit into our business model.
I love that. And I think many of our listeners who are interviewing every day are going to pick up on that tidbit and probably put it into action, because as you were talking, I'm sitting here thinking, there's not a server, there's not a there's no position in a restaurant where you can be slow. You've got to move. And right. That is a great way to kind of get that first impression of whether or not they're going to meet that standard. And I'm sure that's obviously not the only thing that you're looking at, but that's a big one.
No, it is. And obviously I'll ask them things more about what they do outside of their past work performance. What are their hobbies? Where are they from? What are their families about? What do you like to do in your spare time? What book are you reading right now? I mean, all those things can kind of lead to an understanding of, what my mindset is, so that, they fit. I want people that are comfortable being around my wife and I. We've right. never, I don't want to say, we wear our faith on our sleeve, but people know that Drew McCloud is a Christian leader, and that I work by that principle. So I'm not going to bring people in that might be offended by that. And at the same time, I'm not just trying to hire other people that are exactly like me, right? But I want them to understand who I am, so that they have a fair, they have a right to know what they're walking into as much as I have a right to know who I'm hiring.
Yes, sir. Absolutely, great point. And that kind of leads me to thinking about staffing in general as one of the biggest questions that we get from listeners, and one of the biggest industry-wide problems is being able to find staff today. And with your process, how are you seeing decreasing candidates like most people, and kind of how are you coping with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been difficult. I think the best part of my circumstances right now is that I've really focused on retention. So if I develop a culture where people don't want to leave, then I have a much better opportunity of keeping them for the long haul and not having the turnover that most restaurants endure, nationally and everywhere probably in the world, that right. suffers from this transient workforce. So the first thing is to make sure I'm providing them a safe environment, a comfortable environment, and an environment where they can succeed. And so financially, as well as, emotionally and spiritually, or whatever it may be for that. So creating that environment and that culture is really important. Finding new ones is difficult. And I think the thing is, I've learned not to settle. So to me, being fully staffed is not just having enough people that are put into little slots on the schedule. It's really about having people fully trained and able to perform the functions in the way that we want. We got very high standards. We're a finer dining restaurant. And as a result, I get a lot of candidates that are willing to come in and say, oh yeah, I've been serving for 8 years and I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm the best you've ever seen. And yet I say, yeah, it's still going to take you a month to wait tables here. And I just want to see the reaction to that, because they're like, whoa, how could that be? And because there's a lot of content here. Now, there are some people that catch on quickly and can do it more quickly, and they take the time to study. and to know what the menu's all about, because we'll not allow servers to leave the table to inform a guest what is gluten-free, or what can we do for those that might have celiac disease, or if I have a peanut allergen, shellfish. We want those questions answered at the table. And I don't want to have to say, oh, let me go ask Chef, or let me go ask Drew,
Right.
can we do this or not? And so we want them to be educated and working on it. So to have that standard, you have to have staff that are willing to come on board and learn and grow and be coachable in that. Now, in today's environment, finding those people is extremely difficult. I have a lot of friends that are trying Indeed, ZipRecruiter, and everything else to find folks. I find that they tend to come to me, and those that are really searching, that want to improve, they use social media, they see what we're doing and how we're doing it. And maybe it's those that are frustrated because where they are and the culture's not good, or it's a hostile work environment, or they're not making the money that they want to make. They tend to seek out the places that can grow them both, financially and from a career standpoint. And that's where we've had the best success.
Yeah, well, that certainly makes sense. And when you got the reputation and you built the culture, and people see that and they sense it, and if we could all get more people flowing to us, from that perspective, it would be fantastic. But you mentioned Indeed and some of the those other channels. I was speaking to an owner yesterday. I think he was in California, and said he just spent $1,200 last month, on Indeed ads, and it really was like throwing money out the door. I mean, he said he got a lot of resumes, but no follow through. They would contact the people, and the people wouldn't show up. They were just doing what they had to do to be able to collect their unemployment, I guess, for the month.
And that's been a tough situation when they've been making more sitting home than perhaps coming to work.
Yeah.
So it has driven some of that. And I think the other thing for business owners is you have to be patient. But here's one of the big differences. I've never chased the revenues. I've chased dining experiences, particularly here at Savour. So in light of that, I control the space, and I don't have a great number of seats. There's a total of 80, but I will shut sections of the restaurant down and not serve people when I've got a huge demand, because I know I cannot deliver the service. And if the expectations are high and I allow those standards to slip in any way, then I'm going to hurt myself in the long run. So in the short run, if I take a hit on revenues, but preserve my reputation and brand, I'm going to do much better. So there have been circumstances when I've been understaffed, and I've just said, okay. And we're not reservation only, but we have kind of become that, because without a reservation, you don't get a seat. So call it what you will. Mm-hmm. We'll accept walk-ins if we have space. But by controlling, and I spend 2 hours a day controlling the flow of the business for that night. And I do that by making sure that the guests are going in the right table. I make sure that the servers are getting in the right section. I make sure that they're not double sat or triple sat. I space things out so that they have a chance to succeed without feeling rushed or getting rushed to the point where the guest feels rushed, or that they would be inattentive to a guest because they have too much going on. So controlling the flow is very important. And a willingness to sacrifice revenues for quality standards, I think, goes a long way. And so when you're hiring people, be patient. That's my greatest advice. Be patient, hire the right ones, and then train really hard. Do not, and that's the problem that you're going to see with a lot of independents, is that we fail in two areas. One is capital investment. Most independents start restaurants and they don't have enough money to do so. So they're rushing the process of getting it open. They're rushing the training. Let's just get open. I need the revenues. The bank's going to be hit me up, or whatever it may be. And so that's the number one issue that I think most independents sometimes struggle with. The second one is training. We don't have the corporate background and the resources to call upon a store in a sister city 90 miles away to come over and bring a staff and show them exactly what to do and how to do it,
Right.
whether it's back of the house or front of the house. So what I said earlier about expecting and letting incoming new staff members understand that it's going to take time to be trained, because I'm committed to training and making sure that they have all the tools and resources they need. In the long run, it pays off for them as much as it does for me. But those are some of the principles that I kind of work by in order to ensure that I'm A, getting the right people, and B, being patient enough to get the right people.
Yeah, well, I think those are great points, and something, especially for those aspiring entrepreneurs or restaurateurs that are looking to start that first project. Capital is king, and I think you're absolutely right. I've seen it in my local area, and I've seen it with a number of restaurants that I've worked with in the past that open, and they can't make it a year. And I don't know if the expectations were just wrong, or if they did exactly what you just said. They rushed the process, rushed the training, they chased the revenue, and never really got it together.
It was interesting when we decided to do Savour, and in those early stages of talking with the landlord and determining how we were going to go about developing this particular restaurant. I went to the landlord, and I knew the space really well. I knew it needed some work, and that they needed to get that fixed. It had been kind of neglected.
Mm-hmm.
And I also knew the market, right? I've been in Tallahassee a long time. I was concerned about signing a long-term lease and then being on the hook and putting my family at risk for any investment that I wouldn't even be able to realize, so to speak.
Right.
And so I went to the landlord and I said, I'd like a 1-year lease. And they looked at me kind of funny, like, who does that? And I said, well, let me put it to you this way. I'm going to go ahead and invest $100,000 in redecorating the place. I'm going to expect for you to fix the plumbing, the electrical, the HVAC, anything that needs to be done. We're going to get it right. And I said, I'm Scottish, and being Scottish, we're very thrifty. And so I said, I'm not inclined to not renew the lease after a year. And so after 9 months of operations, and I know that this has a chance of being successful, I'll renew the lease for 5 years. But I'm not going to put my neck on the line without creating, like I said earlier, you just don't know if you're going to succeed or not. I didn't succeed the first time I opened a restaurant. There's no guarantee I will this time.
Yeah.
So I think you have to be very cautious about, setting yourself up for success, but also realizing that there is a big risk in this industry. And you're right. I think it's 80% of the first, attempts just fail within a year. And, you get past that 1-year mark, you're kind of going, okay, maybe I got a chance, but you better hope you get to 2 and 3.
Yes, sir.
And of course, you never can predict economic circumstances like we had in 08 and 09, and can't certainly ever predict for something like this past year with COVID. So,
yeah. And I can't imagine. I don't want to go too deep into the whole COVID piece, but as a finer dining establishment, you are an experience-driven restaurant. People come in, they dine, they eat,
right.
they enjoy that experience. So, were you able to, or did you make changes to facilitate that off-premises dining for COVID?
Well, we didn't, and we still don't. And
Nice.
that was a tough decision to make, because we felt we were a week ahead of the curve. We had closed March 16th instead of March 23rd, which Governor DeSantis required all the dining rooms to close. Mm-hmm. We had closed for spring break, which in Tallahassee with FSU, TCC, and FAMU, it was going to be quiet anyhow. So we closed that week, and I got a lot of information and was able to kind of look at the PPP options and see what was happening. So we ended up closing for a total of 7 weeks. And during that 7-week period, rather than try to deliver or have curbside pickup or anything like that, we just felt it would affect our brand and the dining experience that we provide that you just referenced. Yes, so what I did instead was 2 things. I assured my clientele that I was financially secure, we were debt free, and that we would come out on the other side of this. So gift cards were an option. and we sold a significant number of gift cards to those people that wanted to support us and see us, make it through. PPP money did not cover a lot of the bills that come in, the insurance and the rent and certain things that were not provided for. So we sold a lot of gift cards. And the other thing was I have a fairly extensive wine collection. So what I did was I dropped my prices to retail pricing. So we dropped them by about 30% so that we were competitive with ABC Liquor or Publix or whatever. And I sold my wine collection to people that had an interest in either supporting me or, getting some quality wines that maybe they weren't able to get otherwise. So in that 7-week period, we sold enough gift cards and wine to keep it going. And then, when we were given the opportunity to reopen May 5th of last year, we were ready to go. The team was ready to go, and we just hit it. And there were some restrictions and things we had to adjust for, whether it was masks or some social distancing,
right?
And put some of those precautions in place. But people were so ready and anxious to get back and play that we really, by the end of the year, we were only down 15 or 20%. And some of that was made up with PPP money. But by the beginning of this year, January 1, we've had record revenues all throughout, record summer revenues now. We're doing very well, and I thank our team for staying together. I thank my wife for all of her hard work, and I really thank our guests for supporting us and coming back. And it's been an interesting journey. I don't wish it upon anybody, but you got to adjust. You have to be flexible.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I think when you started out, you talked about when you decided when you were 14 and got into the restaurant business. People were telling you, why in the world would you want to get into the restaurant business? And it's it's one of, if not the hardest business I believe to be in terms of as an owner operator. The hours, the risk that you're undertaking. The hard work, it's just people who can succeed in it like yourself, or, our hats are off to you for finding a way through it. And as you said, there was ups and there were downs. And I think that's the story of any entrepreneur. Well, that is some great information. Any specific keys to success that we haven't already talked about? Let's and let me rephrase that. If you were a aspiring new restaurateur and looking at your first project, or if you had a successful project and were looking to expand,
Right.
Anything in particular, any advice that you would share with those people?
Well, interestingly enough, as I said, I've done a lot of consulting with startups and people that are interested in getting into the industry, into the restaurant business. And I do SWOT analyses for them. We do pro formas. We try to put those projections together. I would honestly say that 50% of the time, my recommendation is them for not to use me and don't go into this business. I mean, not everybody's prepared to do it. And I've always said in some of the blogs that I've written that hospitality is genetic, that there is a gene. I think it's within everybody, but it's not necessarily flipped on for everybody. Right. But I think it's really important that that's who you are, that you're really about hospitality. It's not, I didn't get in the business to make money. Certainly I got into it to provide for my family. It's kind of like maybe getting into the ministry. If you're getting into the ministry to get rich, you probably shouldn't be getting into the ministry. If you're getting into the restaurant business, at least for the first time, don't look at it as something to get rich. Look at it as a passion that you have to deliver a product that maybe nobody else can. And so that's first and foremost. I think some of the things you have to mitigate, obviously, and the most important one is location. And that's been said for a millennium, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. I think that what we're faced with now is a couple of things, particularly in Florida. I know other states are having to endure the increase in minimum wage and how that will affect operators and what they'll have to do in order to mitigate that in such a way that our margins, which are already pretty tight, will be affected. And how do we find a way to make it a means of income that's worth the time and effort? Mm-hmm. And so some of the things you have to do that are primarily related to, say, COVID is, can I provide outdoor seating, right? Some people are going to want to continue to have that. And what is the model? So, I mean, there's fast casual, there's fast, QSR, there's fine dining, there's any number of ways to set up a place. And my belief at this point is that the finer dining operations like I have now are going to be more difficult to operate. If you take a look at what's happening in Florida as an example, our minimum wage goes up September 1st to $10 an hour from $8.65. So a $1.35 increase. And those individuals that are obviously making less than that will be bumped to $10 an hour. Now, in my business, in my operation, I don't have anybody making less than $10 an hour. Okay. And in fact, I don't have anybody making less than $11 or $12 an hour. So the people that are designed to get that increase for a living wage, actually in my operation are getting no increase at all, because even my dishwashers make more than $11 an hour. Mm-hmm. So if we take that into perspective, the only ones that are actually getting an increase in pay are my tipped employees, because the tip credit in Florida is $3.02. They're currently making $5.63, and they'll go up to making $6.98. So the only thing that's going to happen is those individuals in my operation making $30 an hour are now going to make $31.35 an hour, and all of that increased expenses. And you and I both know that a dollar is not a dollar, because that increase is going to include workers' comp premium increases, unemployment tax increases, and all the other things that go with that. So we have a situation where all the burden hits me, the employer. We've done the math. It'll cost us about $30,000 the first year, and at least that every year thereafter. So in 5 years, when it's fully implemented, I'm in a situation where I've probably got $150,000 in increased labor expenses that I didn't have 5 years ago. Now, how do I mitigate that? And it's increased prices. That's probably the most obvious one. Yep. But I'm not the only one that's suffering these expenses. All my supply chain has increases. So it's not just my labor that's going up, it's the cost of the products that I purchase that are going up. So now do I have to increase by 20% instead of 10% in order to maintain a margin that says it's worth it for me to get up and work 60 hours a week? I don't, that's going to be tough. So I say all that as you're looking at doing a startup, how do you build a model that is less minimum wage dependent or expense that's related to that? And quite honestly, it takes me, 10 or 12 employees on a shift to get it right here. Now, if I could get the same revenues with half the staff, how do I do that? And you're seeing it, whether it's Nukes or it's Five Guys or it's Maple Street. It's this counter model that has a cashier, 2 or 3 cooks, a manager, an expediter, and a busboy. And although they may be making minimum wage, you can still get the revenues. And so I think as I look to the future, and I'm not, I would like to say that I'm close to being done at my age. But I have a son that has a great interest in following in my footsteps. And if he does, we'll develop a concept for him. But it'll be a concept based on those principles rather than what I'm doing here, because I think the tipped employee model is going to be difficult to maintain. There are some examples out in Oregon, and we've been working with those folks and how to develop a different pay structure to mitigate that. Mm-hmm. But it's not the easiest transition for operators and guests to make, because it's just they're going to see things differently on the check that they hadn't seen before, and some people aren't comfortable with it.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk in the industry over the past, I guess, couple of years, but even more so recently, especially with front of house and back of house pay disparities, and sure. The no tip restaurant models that have come up, and exactly. And you're right, because if you're operating under a no tip situation, the prices are going to have to go up to reflect those that added cost that you got with the server. And guests, suddenly they, the $10 hamburger is $18, and and they don't understand. So it's a challenge for the industry.
It is, and we've just got to figure it out. And we don't want to disincentivize servers, right, or tipped employees. Right. Mm-hmm. If I say, okay, I'm going to pay you the $15 an hour, well, you just gave me a 50% pay cut from what I was getting, and there's no incentive there. So we have to be cognizant of how we protect our team, in every possible way, because quite honestly, without them, I don't have anything.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and you're exactly right. It takes the whole tribe.
It does.
It's not a single Indian can keep an establishment going, and you've got some tremendous advice, some tremendous experience to draw from, and you're sharing that with me and our listeners. We really appreciate that. Are there any particular growth plans for Savour right now? Or are you looking at any new projects that you care to disclose at this time?
Right. So Savour is unique, and Tallahassee's too small to support a second one. I think it would and we've seen others that have tried to do that. I have an executive chef that's he's brilliant, quite honestly, in so many ways, and part of the reason I think we've worked so well together is I've given him the freedom to create, and some of that had been stifled, and so I would say this: I have so much confidence in Brian Nepper that I would not want to confine him to Savour. So we would like to do more together. And finding that out. And I think both of us, because of our love for family, would love not to have to do it every night or 5 nights a week anyhow. We're only Tuesday through Saturday, but, it takes you away from the meal table. And that's something that I know we both value very much. So, definitely. I don't think Savour will create a second one. And, I learned a long time ago when I told you about my dad, the guys he worked for had one in Milwaukee, and then they had one in Atlanta, and then they moved to Miami and opened one in Miami. And the first thing my dad did when he got with them was says, close Milwaukee, close Atlanta. You can't control it from a distance. Let's open a second one in Miami. And Miami was big enough to do that. So I've learned my lesson. I had a restaurant that was 90 miles away. I've had restaurants that are 40 miles away and 60 miles away. And it's difficult, and putting the team in place that you need and you can trust. And I think developing people you can trust is one of the key components to anything that you do in terms of expansion, because you can't do it all yourself. And I've learned that over time. I'm not going to say I'm a micromanager, but I do. I mean, I recognize that I have a very set way of doing things. I'm very open, and I think this is important for your listeners. I'm very open to hearing new ideas from my staff and my team so that we get better. Now, I don't like it when somebody just says, I think we should do it this way. I'm always going to ask why, because everything that I do has a reason behind it, and the why is very obvious. So if you come to me with an idea, it's going to be important that you give me the why. And I'm going to dig into it. I'm going to make you defend it and argue for it. And if I can see the value in your argument and it does make things better or more efficient or less costly, then I'm absolutely going to embrace it. But I can always defend why I do the things the way I do them. And I am particular. My wife is extremely particular. And I think it makes the difference. What's made Savour the success it is, outside of the team members and Brian's talent, is my wife and the nuances that she brings to the industry after having never really worked the industry in the same way. But she sees things from a woman's perspective, the nuances at the table, the perfection of the table sets, the flowers on the table, the cards that are written, the frames that are put out so the guests feel warm and welcome. We greet them at the front door. It's either myself or my wife. We don't have a hostess on staff. We don't hide behind a hostess stand. We stand in front of it and greet people. We don't rush them to a table. We talk to them. We get to know them. Is it your birthday? What's the special occasion? How can we honor and celebrate you? Yeah. And when you connect with people first, when you make a mistake after that, you get a little more grace and you get forgiven a lot more easily than if they don't feel the love and the welcoming that comes from a genuine and sincere interest in being hospitable towards them.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I know myself. I've had many experiences where I didn't feel appreciated as a customer or a guest, and I'm not an outspoken, and I rarely complain, but it sure leaves you with a bad taste, and it's not a place you want to return to. Right. So I applaud you for you and your wife for what you've done with Savour, all your other experiences, and any future projects that you may decide to undertake. And we certainly wish you the best for your. You said 2 sons, right?
Actually, I have 3 sons
You got
and
3
a daughter.
sons. Ah, okay.
My oldest boy is in the military. My daughter's a junior at Florida State University, and my 17-year-old and 14-year-old are still at home.
Gotcha. So you'll certainly, you have a good chance of one of those following you into the
and I'm not telling them
space.
I'm not telling them not to. I mean, I've had a very rewarding career, and I still love the industry. I wouldn't continue to do it at this age, but my dad had a different perspective on it, and I understand that. But my perspective is it's the greatest no glass ceiling industry, and certainly in Florida and many other states where tourism is so strong, people are going to continue to eat out. You just need to bring price value to them, and like you were just saying, I will go to a restaurant if the service is great and I feel welcomed, even if the food wasn't great. But I'm not giving bad service really a second chance in the same way.
Yes, sir.
Rarely. If I have a rude experience or just didn't, I'm not going back. I may not even say anything. But if it's over the top and the food's good, and maybe I enjoy the experience because of the experience, and I think that's what it is. It's not always just about the food.
I think you're exactly right, and I have kept you a good little while now, so I'm gonna. I think it's probably time to wrap up and let you get ready for your evening. You guys open up about 3 or 4 o'clock afternoon?
No, we don't open until 5. We're open 5 to 9. We're very small windows.
Yeah, well, that certainly helps. And if you're a listener and you're in the Tallahassee area, be sure to go by and visit Drew and his wife at Savour Tallahassee. It looks like an incredible experience. I hope to have the opportunity to get there myself, but be sure to jump on the web or either make a call and get a reservation, because they're busy.
Yeah, indeed.
Drew, thank you so much for your guidance, your advice, your counsel, your experience that you've gone through. There's so much more we could talk about, but I do want to be respectful of your time. So thank you very much for joining us today. And we appreciate you being here. And again, this is Jeff Johnson with the Local Leaders Podcast. To our listeners, we appreciate you joining us. If you have questions or comments, please let us know. And we may even get a question or two for you, Drew. And if we do, I'll forward it over to you by email and see if you can help us out with it. But
I'd be happy to. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity to share, and I wish you all the best. And, if you're in Tallahassee, come and see me, please.
You got that. I will be there in a heartbeat. Thank you very much for your time today. And to our listeners, thank you all for joining us. We hope you have a great afternoon and look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Thank you.